Welcome to the Missouri Press Association Candidate Forum for U.S. Senate. I'd like to begin by introducing our participants and going over a few rules of the debate. I'm David Lee with the Associated Press and will be serving as your moderator. Earlier today, candidates drew numbers to determine the order in which they will be making opening remarks. They are arranged on stage in that order, starting closest to me, Nathan Klein, Lucas Kunce, Jared Young, and Josh Hawley. After candidates give their opening statements, I will ask the first question. Then we will proceed to questions from our panelists. Our panelists today are Alvin Reed of the St. Louis American, Christine Temple of the Springfield Business Journal, and Lucas Bresson of the Southeast Missourian in Cape Girardeau. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question. After each has had a turn, I will decide whether any rebuttal time is necessary. If so, candidates will receive an additional 30 seconds, but rebuttals will be reserved only for those candidates involved in criticisms. If candidates fail to answer a question, I also reserve the right to ask them to try again during the rebuttal time. The first question will go to the first candidate on my left. The second question will begin with the second candidate, and so forth. And closing remarks will be delivered in reverse order. Signs will be held up showing the time remaining during remarks. Candidates, please adhere to the stop sign. And audience, please hold your applause until today's event is over. With that, let's begin. Nathan Klein, you may deliver your opening statement.
First, I want to thank the Missouri Press Association for inviting all of the candidates so the Missourians can see all of their choices, and that's very important. I myself am not running against the other candidates on the stage. I'm running against the pay-to-play political system that has sold our democracy to the highest bidder. We all know that that is the case. I and other Green Party volunteers have worked thousands of hours over the last few years, standing on street corners, getting petition signatures so that I and other Green Party candidates can stand on this stage and give Missourians the choice to vote for a candidate that won't take corporate money, that won't take billionaires' money, and will serve just the people of Missouri. We think that's very important and very different than what we see happening, because we are not being served. If you're not a wealthy donor, if you don't have a lot of money, you don't have any say, and that ain't how it's supposed to work.
Lucas Kunce.
All right, hey, I just want to say how excited I am to be here. I got my wife here too. Thank you for being here. Thanks everybody for having us. You know, I'm just a kid who grew up in a working class neighborhood in mid-Missouri. My parents, you know, they were Catholic and followed the rules, so 4 kids. Ended up going bankrupt when my littlest sister had to have a heart surgery. And, you know, for me, it's a really hard time for our family. And we made it through that time because the people in our neighborhood who didn't have any more money than we did, you know, they passed the plate down at my mom's prayer group for us. They brought more food by the house than we can eat and really just took care of us. And I've spent my entire life trying to pay them back. A lot of folks in that neighborhood were veterans. One who was very special to me, who we lost this summer, was a Marine. And I thought the best way to pay them back would be to become a Marine like him. And so I did it. I deployed to Iraq, I deployed to Afghanistan twice, I worked in the Pentagon. This is next step in that service. You know, I'm gonna make sure that I serve the people of this state, the people of that neighborhood, take care of them, bring the money home, and help them make their own decisions in their lives.
Jared Young.
Thank you for having me here, appreciate the invitation. I am here today because most Americans, and especially most Missourians, are completely disgusted and exhausted and frustrated with the state of our national politics. Our system is broken. Our leaders have completely lost the ability to disagree productively and engage with each other to solve problems. The two parties have decided that hatred and anger and contempt are their best tools for winning elections. And we need leaders who reject the party playbook. If we send Josh Hawley or Lucas Kunce to Washington, nothing will change about the way Washington works. I've spent my entire career engaging productively with people who come from all different kinds of backgrounds and have all different kinds of ideas, and working constructively with them to solve complex problems. And that's exactly the approach and expertise that I will bring to Washington and U.S. Senate. Thank you.
Josh Hawley.
Thank you, David. Let's just get right to it. Our country is in crisis. And it's in crisis because of the policies of Lucas Kunce and his allies in power. They opened the border, 15 million illegals have come across. Now Kunce wants to give them amnesty. And then he wants to give them Social Security and Medicare, bankrupting those programs for our seniors. They shut down American energy production. Now Lucas Kunce wants to go further. He wants to ditch all fossil fuels. That's a direct quote. Ditch all fossil fuels, not just oil. That means gas and diesel. That means the biofuels that we blend right here in Missouri. That means bankruptcy for Missouri farmers and workers. He wants men in women's sports. He wants men in women's locker rooms. It's crazy, it's nuts. It's a nutty agenda. Now he's trying to run away from it. He won't even say who he's going to support in this election. Will it be Kamala Harris or will it be Donald Trump? I'm here today to get some answers and to force some accountability.
Wow, so do rebuttals start now?
The
or do they
rebuttals will start
later?
with the questions. Let's go with the first question. The first question has to do with abortion. Abortion policies have diverged greatly in states since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Would you support federal legislation to either establish a nationwide right to abortion or impose nationwide limits on when abortions can be performed? Or do you think the issue should be decided solely by states? The first question begins with Nathan Klein.
Well, I and the Green Party have always supported a woman's right to be in charge of her own body. We're not pro-abortion. We are pro-woman's right to be in charge of her own body. You can either give the right to the infant, the fetus, or the woman. You can't chop them in half. It's a hard choice, but the living woman is in charge of her own body. And the Green Party are in charge of making sure that right is enshrined throughout our country through whatever mechanism that we need to use to make sure that happens. And the Green Party and I will continue to work hard to make sure that the right of women to be in charge of their body remains, enshrined in our law.
Lucas Kunce.
Yeah, Missouri's got the most restrictive law in the country, right? We're the first state in the country to do that. It's Josh Hawley's abortion ban. It bans all abortion, even in cases of rape and incest from day one. I think that's wrong. I think Missourians are smart enough to make their own decisions about how they live their lives, how they build and protect their families. As a U.S. Senator, I'm gonna promise you right now, I will codify Roe versus Wade because we can't have no exception for rape and incest like Josh Hawley has put into play. It's critical that we do that and we put me in the U.S. Senate on this issue because despite the fact that we have a constitutional amendment this fall, where we are going to codify our rights to abortion, Josh Hawley has signed on to a national abortion ban. He wants to override the will of Missouri voters. I don't believe in that. I will protect in vitro fertilization, something he has refused to do twice now on the record. I will protect contraception because I believe that those things are important for everyday Missourians so that we can make our own decisions. This guy wrote an article in 2013 in the Springfield News Leader saying that both in vitro fertilization, the morning after pill, and other types of contraception are the exact same thing as abortion and should be treated like that. It's wrong, and I'm on the opposite side.
Jared Young.
I'm pro-life. I believe that every abortion is a tragedy, but I also believe the pro-life movement does itself a disservice by taking uncompromising and all-or-nothing positions. And I think the situation we see in Missouri right now is a perfect example of that. When Roe versus Wade was struck down, Missouri went all the way as extreme as it possibly could on abortion, and naturally we had a backlash. And now we're in a position where Amendment 3, if it passes, is going to put us in a place that allows even more abortions than we had under Roe versus Wade. And so I think we need to find a place where we're preventing as many abortions as possible, but we're still leaving room for compromise. And that's an area where most Missourians can be comfortable. And if we can actually sit down and discuss it like reasonable people, that's the solution that we'll reach.
Josh Hawley.
David, I don't support a nationwide ban. I do support reasonable federal restrictions, limits on abortion like partial birth abortion, like when the baby is capable of feeling pain. What I will not support is imposing on the state of Missouri and all the other states abortion on demand through 9 months of taxpayer funding. That's what Lucas Kunce wants. That's what the Democrats in Congress have repeatedly tried to force on us. And now they want to go further. In fact, Lucas Kunz and his allies want to go further. They are trying to change our Constitution in this state this year to not only on abortion, but to overturn our ban in the state on transgender surgeries for minors. That's on the ballot this fall. Lucas Kunz and his allies are supporting it. They talk about reproductive health, but what it really does is it allows transgender surgeries for minors without parental consent. I think it's nuts. I think it's absolutely crazy. I voted against it in the Senate, and I would love to hear Lucas Kunz explain to Missouri why he's in favor of it.
Lucas, we'll give you
I
30
guess I
seconds.
get a chance, huh?
You go.
Look, I mean, this is what politicians do election year, right? They lie, they lie, they lie. It's everything a man said on TV about me and things like that, right? It's not true. He has co-sponsored a national abortion ban to override the will of Missouri voters. It has nothing to do with sex change surgeries. He seems mandated sex change surgeries around every single corner because he thinks that he can rile people up that way and actually win the election. It's not true. What I see is a people and women in this state who are smart enough to make their own decisions about how they build their families, about how they protect their families, about how they raise them. I think Missourians are smart enough to make their own decisions, and I'm gonna make sure they can do that.
Josh Hawley, 30
Don't,
seconds.
don't take my word for it. The ACLU, the National Women's Law Center, Planned Parenthood have all said that reproductive health care means gender-affirming surgeries. It means hormone treatments. It means puberty blockers for minors. That's what Kunz and his allies, with a pile of dark money from outside of the state, are trying to get put into our Constitution. It would overturn Missouri's laws. It's absolutely nuts. It's absolutely nuts. Now, if he wants to change his position on the stage now, I'm all for it. I welcome it. I'd also love to hear if he's going to vote for Kamala Harris. I'm going to keep track. We haven't heard it yet, and I'm going to ask throughout the debate. But I'm telling you, read the text. He's not being honest with you.
Now going to move to our next question. It comes from Alvin Reed, and it will go first to Lucas Kunz.
Congress has been unable to come to any kind of legislative policy on the subject of immigration. What do you think Congress can realistically do to help manage the flow of immigrants at the southern border of the United States?
Lucas Kunz.
You know, I was a Marine for a long time. I mentioned that before, 13 years on active duty. And before I led a police training team in Iraq, I was scheduled to be on a border team there. And so as a Marine, I went to the southern border. I trained with the Border Patrol. I was certified by the Border Patrol Tactical Unit. And there's very simple solutions here that we can bring to the cause, right? Like we need to stop the flow of fentanyl, vote for fentanyl machines. We have fentanyl scanners. Most of it comes through regular port of entries. Josh Hawley voted against funding fentanyl scanners in a Homeland Security bill. We need to fully fund and equip Border Patrol, something he repeatedly voted against. When Roy Blunt, who's from this area, negotiated a bipartisan bill that Donald Trump signed, Josh Hawley voted against it. And he voted against the recent bill to end catch and release programs that the Border Patrol guys who I trained with actually supported and endorsed. So what we need to do here is end catch and release, stop the flow of fentanyl, fully fund and equip Border Patrol. I stand beside every single one of those things, and that's what I'm going to do as a U.S. Senator.
Jared Young.
Immigration is an area where I think most Americans, most Missourians agree on two truths. The first truth is that we need secure borders. The second truth is that we need legal immigrants. They're an incredibly important part of our economy, an important part of our culture. And it should be possible for us to form policy that acknowledges both of those truths. The only thing getting in the way of that is partisan warfare. And we saw that 6 or 7 months ago when a bipartisan bill was negotiated in the Senate that acknowledged both of those truths and made progress in a lot of these areas. But the bill was killed not because it was bad policy, purely because of politics, because one side didn't want to give the other side a win. And that's what we have to end. There are lots of good ideas out there, lots of good policies, that we just have to be willing to sit down and talk about them without throwing stones at each other.
Josh Hawley.
The answer on immigration is to close the border, reinstate the Remain in Mexico program and the Safe Third Country protocols, which this administration tore up. Now, as to that bipartisan border bill that Lucas Kunz just mentioned, it was a terrible bill. It would have allowed 5,000 people across the border every day, 5,000, before you could close it. It would have increased the number of green cards by an astronomical number. It would have mandated taxpayer funding for illegals' lawyers. So you bet I voted against it. But there's no surprise, Lucas Kunz opposes a border wall. Lucas Kunz wants amnesty for illegals in this country. That's 15 million in the last 3 years. And then he wants to put them, after he's given them the amnesty, on Social Security and Medicare. You want to bankrupt Social Security and Medicare? Put 15 to 20 million illegals on those programs. That's his plan. It's absolutely nuts. It's crazy. And I still haven't heard an answer as to whether or not he's voting for Trump or Kamala.
Nathan Klein.
All right, the immigration crisis in this country is driven by the climate crisis. The reason why people are piling up at the border is because family farmers are failing because of drought, hurricanes, and that's only going to get much worse. Okay, beating up the weakest people in our society, desperate people. People don't flee their homes unless there's fire there. They're running for their lives. And the United States has always been the most welcoming place in the world for immigrants, and it's been our secret weapon and our best strength. So what we need at the border is more people to process applications. Okay, we don't need more guards. We don't need to militarize the border. These are our neighbors. Immigrants are less violent in this country than natural-born Americans. U.S. citizens are bringing most of the fentanyl across the border, not immigrants. Immigrants are coming here to work hard and to strengthen America, and that's what we should understand and take to heart.
Lucas, would you like 30 seconds to respond to Senator Hawley's description of your
I
immigration?
would, thank you very much. He's lying again. Like, it's election year, the guy's gotta lie. I don't oppose a border wall. If we are in a situation where we gotta decide what finances we have and what we're gonna put them towards, that's probably the least effective thing. That doesn't mean that I oppose it. I don't support amnesty for people who came here the wrong way. I support a path to citizenship for people who came here the right way, and for the Afghan and Iraq interpreters who supported me and helped me when I was in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've never said anything about giving people free health care like this. I think remain in Mexico is a fine policy. I think we can have that in place along with ending catch and release. Like, the sad thing here is that Josh Hawley has voted against keeping us safe 3 times because, as Jared said, he wants to keep it as a campaign issue rather than look at the train wreck that we have going on and actually support everyday people and keep us safe, stop the flow of fentanyl, etc.
Senator Hawley, 30
In
seconds.
2022, you told a Vote Smart survey you oppose a border wall. You said in 2022 and 2023, you are for citizenship for people who are here illegally.
That's
You
not
have
true.
also endorsed, we are fact-checking Lucas in real time. You can look right now on social media. We'll post up his voting scorecard. We'll post up everything he said. He has also endorsed Medicare for everybody. He wants to give all of these folks amnesty and then Medicare and Social Security, which actuarial analysis shows will bankrupt the program. That's just the facts. Listen, I've got people like this and before me in the Senate all the time who change their stories. I'm used to getting accountability. We're going to get it today.
Josh, you're used to lying, and you're continuing to do that. I support health care for United
Candidates,
States
we're going to move
citizens.
to the next
For
question.
United
you
States
said.
citizens.
The
I
next
never said
question
anything
Not what
will
you
come
said.
from Christine, and we'll go first to Jared Young.
Many of the income cuts passed by Congress in 2017 are due to expire at the end of next year. Do you support the extension of these tax cuts, or do you think some taxes should be allowed to rise, such as on high-income earners or corporations? Are there any additional tax cuts you support, such as expanding the child tax credit or repealing the income tax on tips or overtime pay?
Jared Young.
Okay, so there's a lot in that question. I'm glad you asked it because one of the things that doesn't get talked about on a national stage right now by either party is our national debt and our increasingly ridiculous deficit spending. As long as we continue to ignore this problem, it's a ticking time bomb. It's going to blow up on us, and we have to have leaders that are willing to tackle it. Now, solving that issue is going to require some hard decisions. It'll require both cuts in spending and increases in revenue. So when we talk about the 2017 tax cuts, I think those led to a lot of great things for our economy. But we have to make sure we're being really smart about which things we extend and which things we let go. I'm in favor of things like raising the Social Security cap on high-income earners. I'm in favor of things like means testing Social Security so that we can get that program back on a solvent path. But I'm also never a fan of raising taxes. So we just have to be smart, and we have to be able to live within our means and start making decisions that will lead us down that path.
Josh Hawley.
I do favor increasing the child tax credit. In fact, I just voted to expand it just a couple of weeks ago. I do favor eliminating taxes on tips and on overtime pay. I think that's terrific for workers. What I will not support is the kind of energy tax that Lucas Kuntz will impose by ditching all fossil fuels. He told American Prospect magazine in 2021, you can read the article, we'll post it, that he wants to ditch all fossil fuels immediately, not just oil, all fossil fuels. He wants to decarbonize our entire economy for a cost of $4.5 trillion. That's his estimate. The taxes that will result on for Missouri families are astronomical. The loss of jobs is unimaginable. The loss of biofuels in this state will be devastating. The loss of industry in this state will be unimaginable. And if you think we're too dependent on China now, wait until he gets his way. It's nutty. It's absolutely nutty. And there's no way that I'd support it. It'd be terrible for the state.
Nathan Klein.
All right, well, tax policy in this country has gotten real goofed up since when it used to work. I support something like the Eisenhower-Nixon tax rates in the 1950s, the greatest era of widespread prosperity and shared power amongst Americans. The Eisenhower-Nixon tax rates had the top tax rate at 91%. The blue team and the red team are arguing it down in the 20s, and we know that the rich and powerful have so many tax cuts they don't even pay taxes at all. So what we need to do is raise the taxes on the wealthiest Americans, 3 of whom own more wealth, have more power than all 50% of all Americans. That is a moral crisis and the root of the struggles of American families. We need to go back to the era of redistributed progressive taxation that led to the greatest era of American shared prosperity. And I'm the only person on this stage that will stand up for that, for sure.
Lucas Coons.
Sure, so before we start the time, am I doing this whole national security energy stuff first? Do I save that? Do I just do a minute and a half? What's the plan?
Or it's only those two
It's your
guys get
time.
to talk more.
What's that?
It's your
Only
time.
these 2 guys get to talk more.
Well, I'm asking, do I get another 30 after the minute?
You get a minute, and then there's 30 seconds for Bob.
Oh, I see, okay. So, well, I support tax cuts for everybody under $400,000. We're gonna keep those. I will always stand beside working people every single day because that's who supported me and my family when we were going bankrupt. Period. If you're getting tips, they shouldn't be taxed, and I'm for expanding the child tax credit. Like, we need to take care of working people in this country. As for what that also means, it means putting America first in the next generation of energy and manufacturing. I have a Marshall Plan for the Midwest to build out that energy and manufacturing, have good union jobs right here in the Midwest. Josh Hawley's voted against investment here every single chance that he gets. And when he talks about energy and China, he is letting China get ahead by being in the pocket of oil companies, right? And that's not where we should be right now. We should be investing in the next generation because what's going to happen is we're going to swap out a cartel of energy people run by the Saudis, the Venezuelans, and the Russians for China if we don't make the investments in the next generation of energy. He doesn't want to do that because he's owned by oil companies. I think it's gross. It's bad for America. It's bad for America's energy. It's bad for all of us. It's bad for our energy future. It is a real national security issue where we have to take control of our future on this.
Senator Hawley, would you like 30 seconds?
I would. Number one, I don't take corporate contributions. Number two, I didn't hear any response to the reality, the fact that Lucas Coons wants to, quote, ditch all fossil fuels, not just oil, he says, all fossil fuels, all. That will absolutely devastate this state. It will devastate this state. It might be fine for the green energy wackos, but it will not work in the state of Missouri. We're talking about no gas and diesel. We're talking about no way to harvest the crops, no way to plant the crops, no biofuels to blend. It's his plan, American Prospect Magazine. Go read it. He wrote it literally. $4.5 trillion. The taxes that will result in for middle-class families, the devastation will be unimaginable. It's totally nutty.
Lucas Coons.
Yeah, again, that's absolutely ridiculous. I'm talking about us owning our energy future 50 years from now, making the investments so that we can actually get there, and we aren't beholden to China on the next generation of energy, because that's who's going to own it. That is who is going to control it. That's who's taking it over right now, because people like Josh Hawley won't make the investment in the next generation of energy. We are going to be behind. As for our oil and gas right now, I'm fine with us extracting it. The one thing that I want to add to it is I want to make sure it doesn't go overseas. I think there should be an export ban on all of our fossil fuels so that it stays right here. It keeps the prices down while we make this transition to the future, because if we don't make that transition, we are going to lose.
Nathan Klein, you want 30 seconds on the green energy wackos?
I would like, as I'm one of those green energy wackos. All right, folks, we need to get realistic, okay? All of the climate scientists have been telling us for generations, and we're talking about thousands of PhDs in dozens of fields all over the world, that if we don't stop burning fossil fuels, the human civilization is it's existential crisis. We only have about 35 years worth of fossil fuels left at current use rates, people. We have to get realistic. None of these people are realistic, okay? We have to get off of them, and we have to figure out how we're going to live without them. because human civilization is going to collapse long before we even get to burn it all.
We're gonna
Wake up.
We're going to move on to the next question. It comes from Lucas Preston, and it goes first to Josh Hawley. Your question?
Polls say inflation is going to be one of the top issues in this election year. Many people have been frustrated by the higher costs of food, prescription drugs, housing, and general living expenses. What do you blame for this situation? Is there anything that you believe Congress can do to address it?
Well,
Josh Hawley.
thank you. The cause of this is because the liberals in power, Lucas Kuntz's allies, followed his plan and shut down American energy production. Joe Biden came right into office, shut down American energy production. And that caused inflation to absolutely surge. You want to fix the inflation problem? Reopen American energy. And that includes right here in the state of Missouri. We blend 250 million gallons of biodiesel, 300 million gallons of ethanol every single year in the state. Kuntz's plan to ditch all fossil fuel. He just said a second ago, I want to protect exports. Well, go read his piece. We're posting it right now. Ditch all fossil fuel. He says he wants to push us to electric vehicles. Do you know where those are made? 70% of it made in China. Do you know who controls the electric vehicle component manufacturing? It's China. Do you know where we will be getting our energy if we can't use our own fossil fuels and biofuels? It'll be China. We will be dependent on the Chinese communists if Lucas Kuntz has his way. Now, again, if he wants to change his position and renounce his article, I'm all ears. I still haven't heard an answer to who he's voting for. Maybe he likes President Trump's energy policy. He can tell us right now. I yield the balance of my time if he wants to answer that.
Nathan Platt.
Is the question about inflation or is the question about?
Questions about inflation.
Okay. Last time we had this kind of inflation in this country, okay, was during the Nixon administration in the 70s. What did Nixon, no kind of communist, okay, do? He ordered a price freeze in this country because companies were gouging the American consumer, okay? And he said, if you raise your taxes, I will put you in jail, okay? Nobody on this stage are all far to the right of Richard Nixon, okay? I'm saying that we need government to come to the aid of the tax-paying citizen and stop being servants of the price-gouging multinational corporations and billionaires that are the reason for this inflation.
Lucas Kuntz.
Yeah, I just want to thank Josh Hawley for proving my point on China and energy. They are controlling the next generation of our energy. That's why we need to make the investments here so that doesn't end up being what's happening. You're exactly right. That is where we are headed. That's Josh Hawley's world. It's not the world that I want to live in. As for inflation, he's lying again. The reason we are extracting more energy here than we ever have before. The thing that's holding it back is Exxon CEOs who don't want to extract more. Whatever you think about that, that's the reason for the gas situation we're in. But inflation is coming from his corporate buddies, the same guys who got him elected in 2018, gouging us. They took advantage of the pandemic. They raised prices because of supply chain woes. They kept the prices high. They are literally just price gouging us. You can see that in record corporate profits, and you can see that in the massive amount of share buybacks that they're doing. As a U.S. senator, I will vote to ban share buybacks because what that is that's a transfer of wealth from everyday people upward to a shareholder class that frankly just doesn't need it. And he loves supporting them because that's who put him in office.
Jared Young.
You asked what I think has caused inflation. I agree with Senator Hawley that the energy policies of the Biden administration have contributed to it. I also think the runaway government spending of the last 4 to 6 years has greatly contributed to it. If you flood the market with capital, prices are naturally going to go up. Now, inflation has slowed down over the last few months. What we need to make sure we do is we give wages a chance to catch up because people are still hurting. And there are a number of suggestions out there being talked about at the presidential level that are going to hurt inflation. They're going to increase inflation. That includes broad tariffs. Tariffs will not hurt other countries. They will hurt American consumers. We need to use targeted tariffs to punish bad actors, but not use broad tariffs because they will raise prices. We also should avoid a huge increase in the corporate tax rate. I'm the only person on the stage who's been a CEO who's run a business. I understand how businesses respond when their costs go up. They respond by raising prices, and they respond by cutting their own costs. That means it hurts employees and it hurts consumers. So we need to be careful that we continue to ride this lowering inflation and not do anything that's going to exacerbate it.
Senator Hawley, you're like 30 seconds.
David, it is not investment in America to ditch America's fossil fuels. Lucas Coombs keeps saying we need to invest in America. Absolutely we do. That's not what he would do. Ditching our fossil fuels, shutting down our energy production, stopping biofuels in Missouri, that's not investing in America. That's bankrupting America. That's the problem. That's what he wants. $4.5 trillion, his energy plan. It's nuts. It's absolutely crazy. And the idea that closing down American energy production hasn't led to higher costs, go tell that to the Americans who can't afford gas. They can't afford groceries for their kids. It's because of his policies. And I still haven't heard if he's voting for Kamala.
Lucas?
Yeah, my policies have nothing to do with this. What I'm talking about is putting us in charge of our energy future. That's it. I want us to control our energy. Josh doesn't care about that. Right now, we are controlled by a cartel that consists of multinational corporations like Exxon, who specifically said, their CEO said, I don't make decisions based on what's good for America. I make decisions based on what's good for me. A cartel led by that guy, the Saudis, the Venezuelans, and the Russians, and he's proposing replacing that with a cartel led by China in the future. Absolutely not. We need to make the investments in the next generation of energy so that we can move beyond that cartel controlling our energy costs.
We're going to go to the next question. It's coming from Alvin. It will go first to Nathan Klein. Alvin?
All right, let's discuss healthcare costs. They continue to rise, placing a significant financial burden on families and individuals across Missouri. What specific policies would you support to reduce the cost of healthcare while ensuring that quality care remains accessible to all?
Nathan Klein.
Well, Alvin, as you should know, as we should know, is the United States pays twice as much money per person as any other country in the world, and yet has worse outcomes than any of our peers. This is profound failure. And you go to blue states that are completely controlled by the blue team and red states completely controlled by the red team, and you have the same exact problem, okay? Because they take lots and lots of money from insurance companies and hospital corporations, et cetera, maximizes the profitability of those corporations, but it puts Americans in the poorhouse, makes grandma not be able to pay for her medication, makes working families not know how they're going to have a baby, okay? Now, what we need to have is universal, single-payer, government-funded health care like every other industrialized country in the world, but neither the blue team or red team will give it to you. Only the green team will. I'd be happy to take your vote and fight for you.
Lucas Coombs.
You know, this issue is personal to me. As a kid, my family went bankrupt from medical bills. And we didn't make it because country club politicians like Josh Hawley were there for us. We made it because the people in our neighborhood who had no more money than we did passed the plate for us down to my mom's prayer group and brought more food by the house than we could eat. I think that's wrong. I don't think you should go bankrupt in this country because you've decided to have a kid. I think that's criminal, it should be changed. And you know, that's why I'm so proud to take no corporate PAC donations, but also to take no money from any pharmaceutical executive, no big pharma executives. And I think we need to, you know, one thing I saw that happened recently was a capped price on insulin. That needed to happen. Josh Hawley voted against that. I think we need to enforce our antitrust laws because these big hospital systems are buying up small providers and they're shutting them down so that we have to travel for our insurance. We need to stop share buybacks. Insurance companies have conducted $140 billion in share buybacks over the last few years. That's money, that was our money. That was our money we paid in premiums that they gave back to them. And the last thing is, we have pharmaceutical benefit managers, PBMs, that are running the pharmaceutical industry as middlemen, and they're literally just cutting the pharmaceutical companies out so they can't do anything. They're cutting the small pharmacists out, and they're taking all the profit for themselves and gouging us at the register. It's wrong, they need to be broken up.
Jared Young.
I think the thing that makes America great, that's made our economy so great, is free market forces. We have unleashed the free market, and the sectors of our economy work best when the players in those sectors are subject to market forces. And I think the problem in healthcare, I think we all acknowledge that there are problems in healthcare. The problem is that so many of the players have not been subject to market forces. So I'm in favor of reforms, including with PBMs, including with insurance providers, that make sure they're being subject to the same market pressures, the same competition that players in other sectors of the economy are subject to. That's what will create efficiencies. I'm not in favor of the government taking over healthcare. If you think healthcare is painful and inefficient right now, wait till the government takes it over. You won't like what you get.
Josh Hawley?
Yeah, the answer is, number one, we should cap the cost of prescription drugs. And I mean all prescription drugs. These pharma companies, they charge us one price. They charge the Canadians and the Europeans something half or less than that. I've introduced legislation that would say whatever price they pick in Europe or Canada is what they can charge here in the United States of America. They're making money hand over fist. No more of that. We should cap the cost of insulin. Lucas Kunz just lied to you. I was one of only, I think, 6 or 7 Republicans who voted to cap insulin prices. I've introduced a bill to cap insulin prices. We'll fact check it right now on social media. I tell you what I wouldn't do. I would not put illegal immigrants on Medicare. What I would not do is take 15 or 20 million illegals, give them amnesty like Lucas Kunz has advocated for years now, and then put them on Medicare. That will bankrupt the Medicare system. It is wrong for our seniors. It is wrong for those American citizens who have paid in for years to that program and rely on it, literally for life-saving help, to have illegals taken away and bankrupt them. And Lucas Kunz is wrong to propose it.
If you'd like 30 seconds, Lucas, go ahead.
Well, I mean, on the instant claps, he voted for it before he voted against it. I think we've seen that quite a bit out there, right? And as far as the immigrants getting, I mean, he's just making this up. Like, I have never proposed that, and I don't think that it's right. I do think, however, that U.S. citizens, like my family, who went bankrupt for medical bills, and like those in that neighborhood, should have access to affordable health care and shouldn't be getting gouged and robbed by PBMs, by insurance companies, and all your other buddies. I think it's wrong, and we gotta do something about it.
Josh Hawley, our 30-second rebuttal kicks it back to you.
Yeah, well, sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, you notice now he did just admit I did vote to cap insulin, so thank you. We'll still fact check it. Listen, when you say that you want amnesty for 15 to 20 million illegals, when you say that you want Medicare, you have 2022 in the vote survey, in the last Senate race you said it. In 2023, you said it again. You have endorsed repeatedly Medicare for everybody, which by the way includes illegals now. You've endorsed these plans. We'll put it all online as I'm speaking. You can go there right now.
I also heard I'm gonna
And
take
whoa,
away
whoa,
everyone's
whoa,
pickup
whoa,
truck
David,
keys, right?
whoa. Well, you're doing that.
No, you're not gonna whoa me.
So,
You
here's
got more
the-
time, and I'm gonna take it when you're
David.
lying.
Our 30 seconds is about over here.
Yeah,
We'll move
but
on
I think
to
it's
the
my
next
time,
one.
isn't it?
So,
Well,
It's my time.
let's let Nathan go.
we're going to move on to the next question.
Well, no, let me just finish this.
And this question is going to come from Christine, and it's going to go to Lucas Kunz first.
Former President Donald Trump has proposed steep tariffs on imports from China. Do you support a more aggressive tariff policy toward China? Or do you have concerns this ultimately would harm American consumers?
Lucas Kunz.
When I was at the Pentagon, I did arms control negotiations, I did counter weapon mass destruction, I was a Marine stationed there on the Joint Staff, and I actually extended for a year to work in Donald Trump's Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering office. And the reason I did that is because I see our competition with China as one of the greatest threats that we have right now, and I see them getting ahead on literally everything, including energy, which we've talked about a lot tonight. And so for me, I think this is about keeping America in charge of its own national security. I think we should have tariffs. I also think that that needs to come with, like that tariff money, anything we get from that needs to be put into investment where we are counteracting what they're doing. Because, if that money just ends up going to shareholders, et cetera, it's not gonna work out. Like, we have to invest in our energy future. We have to invest in our production. I mean, when I was at the Pentagon, we had a study where we found you can't make a single weapon system, major weapon system, without inputs from China. That's crazy. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. That's crazy. But that's a result of Josh Hawley's policy. It's a result of his laissez-fairness and his ignorance of national security.
Jared Young.
I spoke against tariffs earlier, but I do agree with tariffs against China. The point of tariffs is to punish countries who are not playing the game fairly. China is clearly one of those countries. We need to have a stronger stance against China. I agree with Lucas and with Josh, frankly, that China is one of the biggest threats to our national security. We have to be tough with them economically. We have to be tough with them from a national security perspective. So when it comes to tariffs, while I oppose broad tariffs, I think those will increase prices and hurt the economy. I think targeted tariffs against China are the right thing to do.
Josh Hawley.
Yes, is the answer to your question. I support President Trump's tariff agenda. I support tariffs on China. I support tariffs that protect American industry and will bring back good paying jobs right here to the state of Missouri. Now, I noticed that Lucas Kunz just mentioned Donald Trump yet again. He's got an ad on TV where he has Trump's name up there and is proud to have worked for Trump. Big bear hug to Trump, big kiss to Trump, but I haven't heard if he's voting for Trump. I haven't heard who he's voting for at all. So he was fussing about time a second ago. I'll yield the rest of mine. Look, I got a lot left. I'll yield the rest of it to Lucas to tell us who he's voting for.
I'll tell you right now, I will
Who are you
work
voting
with,
for?
I will work with anyone
It
in
is,
the U.S. Senate to bring money back to Missouri,
Who are you voting
to
for?
invest in Missouri.
It's
and put us
Nathan
in
Klein's
business.
turn here. So, Nathan?
Well, the blue team and the red team act like, you know, they're all against each other here. They skipped hand in hand together in all these bad trade deals that have put us in this situation with China. Almost all of them together, you know, past, you know, most favored trading status for China, NAFTA, and GATT, and all these bad deals, okay? And now they're like arguing over, you know, the wreckage that they've caused. We need different leadership that is going to, number one, we have a low energy future in the future if we're going to survive on this planet. And we need to make self-sustaining communities that feed themselves, produce their own energy, and et cetera. You know, all of these international supply chains are going away, people. We need to have leadership that recognizes this and takes us out of the burning building that we're in, which is the climate crisis, and towards a sustainable future that our children and grandchildren can continue to live on this planet. And there's only one party that's talking about that, and that's the Green Party.
Okay, the next question will come from Lucas Presson, and we'll go first to Jared Young. Lucas, your question.
Russia's war against Ukraine has been going on for 2.5 years. The U.S. supplied both money and weapons to Ukraine. Do you support the United States' continued military and financial support for Ukraine? Explain why or why not, and what is the solution to end the war?
Jared Young.
Yes, I support continued support to Ukraine. I believe that Russia and China and Iran represent a serious threat to our country. They are actively working to undermine our interests. They're actively working to undermine the world order that's served us so well for the last 60 or 70 years. And in order to push back, we need to have a strong stance. We are at a stage where our allies don't trust us and our enemies don't fear us. And both the Trump administration and the Biden administration have contributed to that problem. So we have to be strong against our enemies. Now in Ukraine, in terms of how to end the war, I think we need to give more support, more consistent support to Ukraine. Yes, we give them lots of money and lots of weapons, but it's always been slow, and it's always been it's too little too late.
Josh Hawley.
No is the answer to your question. I do not support continued funding to Ukraine. We spent, what, $200 billion on Ukraine? By the way, we haven't tracked a penny of it. The Senate has repeatedly voted down my efforts to track every single penny of what we're spending. We have absolutely no idea. Lucas Kuntz has been in favor of unlimited funding for Ukraine. He's tweeted about it, he's talked about it, he's written about it. We need to stand by Ukraine, more money to Ukraine. I'll tell you this, in St. Louis, Missouri, and St. Charles, as we sit here right now, there is nuclear radiation in the soil, in the water, in the air, under homes. I think it's time we spent some money compensating the victims of that radiation, cleaning that up before we spend another penny in Ukraine, while our allies, by the way, in Europe, like Germany, sit there contributing next to nothing compared to us. So I don't support the Ukraine First policy of Lucas Kuntz and his allies. I don't support hundreds of billions of dollars more in Ukraine spending. What I do support is taking care of our people, taking care of the folks right here in this state who are hurting and dying at the highest rates of cancer in the nation as we sit here. That ought to be our priority.
Nathan Klein.
The disastrous war in Ukraine is a perfect example of the blue team and the red team skipping hand in hand to Armageddon, okay? Both of them have been through blue team and red team administrations since the end of the Cold War, when Bush Sr. promised Gorbachev that NATO would not be moved 1 inch toward the Russian border. Now we're trying to push into Ukraine. The Russian bear has been pushed into the corner. It's our military projection on their border, not their military projection onto our border. We have over 800 foreign military bases. No other country has 5. Okay? We need to stop this aggressive military posture around the world, which is just making their wealthy weapons manufacturers a whole bunch of money, but endangering us, and bring that investment back to our communities to serve the tax-paying American working class healthcare, education, transportation, etc. That's where it should go and stop endangering us with their aggressive foreign military adventures.
Lucas Coons.
You know, there's a fun video, Josh Hawley, I'll have the team post it, of him ranting and raving about how Joe Biden is not giving Ukraine enough help and enough weapons and saying that's what Ukraine needs, that's what Ukraine's asked for. Again, this guy, he just flips and flops on everything during election year when he thinks it's going to help him out. As the only person, as far as I know up here, who's ever worn a uniform, who has ever put boots on ground in a foreign country. In Iraq, I led a police training there. I had a team there. I had 12 Marines and Navy corpsmen who my job was to conduct the mission and get us home safely, which thank God we did. I deployed to Afghanistan twice. I can tell you right now, the one thing we need to do is make sure we do not put boots on the ground somewhere else. Our aid to Ukraine at $200 billion is infinitely cheaper than the $6.4 trillion we spent in Iraq and Afghanistan, supposedly nation building there once we put boots on the ground. Of course, I think we should do the cheaper option. And what I don't want to do is what he wants to do, and that's set us up for a war with China. Because if you think Iraq and Afghanistan were too expensive, I'm going to tell you what, a war with China is something that none of us can ever afford.
30 seconds if you'd like. Go ahead.
Well, I think we just heard there was a word salad worthy of Kamala Harris, so we won't say who he's voting for. But what you notice he did say is that he supports continued funding for Ukraine. I do not. I've voted repeatedly against it and been attacked repeatedly for it by members of my own party, which I'm absolutely fine with, because my priority is Missouri. My priority is this country. And so long as nuclear radiation victims in this state are not compensated, I'm not going to vote for a dime more funding for Ukraine. I don't have to hem and haw about it like he just did. I can tell you straight out, just like I can tell you who I'm voting for this November. And Lucas, we're still waiting.
I'm going to take my 30 seconds.
Go ahead, Lucas, 30 seconds.
Absolutely. Again, I'm the only person up here who has ever worn a uniform. This guy popped popcorn and watched the invasion of Iraq. Absolutely despicable behavior. Again, he doesn't care about people in uniform. He would have us go to a war with China, and he doesn't want to do the right thing here, which is keep boots off the ground in Ukraine and in Europe. Like, we have to make sure that that doesn't happen. That will be the biggest tax on middle-class people in this state that you have literally ever seen in your entire life.
The next question comes from Alvin, and it goes first to Josh Hawley. Alvin, your question?
The war between Israel and Hamas has resulted in thousands of deaths. Ceasefire talks appear to be unproductive. Should the United States support, should the support for Israel efforts be contingent on certain factors? And do you believe the U.S. should be doing more than it already is to also provide aid to Palestinian residents?
Josh
No to both. No, we should not condition our aid to Israel. And no, I think we should not pressure Israel into a ceasefire. Listen, I just 2 days ago in the Senate had a hearing at which I sat and listened to a witness sitting as close to me as you are now try to tell me that all of the anti-Semitism and violence against Jewish Americans on campus wasn't really happening and wasn't real. It is real. The attack on Israel is real. We should be standing unequivocally with our ally Israel, not talking about ceasefires, not talking about how we can help Hamas. We should be saying to Israel, get the job done. And for those folks here in this country on our campuses, they ought to be safe. Lucas Coons was talking about a ceasefire on October 7th. On October 7th, he tweeted, we need a ceasefire. We don't need a ceasefire until Hamas is eliminated. And I'd also like to hear from Lucas Coons, is he going to condemn what has happened on our campuses in this country, where Jewish students fear for their lives, because of the pro-Hamas demonstrators and protesters who are threatening to kill them, threatening to run them off campuses. It is absolutely despicable, and I'd like to hear if he's going to condemn it.
Nathan Klein?
What's going on in the Middle East has been going on for a long, long time, okay? This is not a new situation. The international community has demanded that the Israelis, including the United States, evacuate all of their settlements from the Palestinian territories. And the Palestinians have a state. Right now, the United States by itself at the UN is stopping the world from doing something because of our veto at the Security Council to stop this mass murder in Gaza, okay? We've got two criminal operations, Hamas and the Israeli government, and it has nothing to do with race. It has to do with war crimes. And the United States, if the United States would simply let the world act, then the murder would stop tomorrow and we could move to negotiations and a settled peace in which two states with two respected people can live side by side. And that's what we need to move toward, and stop sending billions of dollars for bombs to pour gas on that fire.
Lucas Coons.
I believe there's no place for anti-Semitism or any type of hate on our college campuses or anywhere in this country. And I think if you look back in time, the person who spews the most hate up on this stage is the guy all the way to my left. And as for what happened on October 7th, I think it was an absolute tragedy. You know, kids at a music festival and everything that went along with that. I think Israel had a right to defend themselves. And I think what we've seen over the months since then is, that defense has led to thousands and thousands of civilian lives being lost. And it's, again, as far as I know, I'm the only person here who's been in a war zone, both Iraq and Afghanistan. I can tell you right now that killing all of the civilians or having thousands and thousands of civilians die does not bring about peace. Taliban has Afghanistan right now. ISIS is still running through Iraq. We killed a lot of people there. That's not how this works. I think we need to get to a negotiated ceasefire that brings back the hostages. I think that should be one of the conditions. Because really, for everybody's peace and security, that's going to be the best. It's going to be the best for Israel, it's going to be the best for Palestine, and it's going to be the best for all of us.
Jared Young.
I'm the only person on the stage who's actually lived in the area we're talking about. I lived in Amman, which is about 40 miles from Jerusalem, and I spent months making friends with people who were displaced Palestinians, so I deeply understand the history there and what's led us to this point. However, what happened on October 7th was an atrocity. Israel absolutely has a right to defend itself. I believe Israel is trying to show restraint as it pursues the destruction of Hamas, has a right to destroy Hamas. But Hamas is an enemy that deliberately puts civilians in the path of danger. So I think we should continue to support Israel. They're an important ally in the region. They're the only functioning democracy in the region. But I also think we should be exerting our influence on Israel to look for a long-term solution. If Israel thinks they can just return to the status quo and everything will be okay, that's not going to work. History is just going to repeat itself over and over and over again. So we must find a long-term solution to the issue.
Okay, we have time for one last question.
Well, for my way of rebuttal, I did live in Iraq for way too long, which is right there.
Our last question will come from Christine, and we'll go first to Nathan Klein.
The use of artificial intelligence is growing rapidly in the business world, schools, and even in some political campaigns. Are there specific steps that Congress should take to establish guardrails around this technology?
Nathan Klein.
Well, of course we should. Of course we should, but the folks on this stage besides me think that the market should determine everything. Let the private market do whatever it wants. We shouldn't regulate the private market. It's a magic trick that makes everything perfect. Of course, if we just let AI be developed in a private lab somewhere, we all know that there's a lot of danger there. We need to take that technology and regulate its development so that it serves us, not enslaves us. We know how dangerous this is. We need to put the American people priority here, and we need to regulate the development of this. And right now, that's not happening at all. And so I and the Green Party will make sure that this technology is developed responsibly, carefully. There's no reason to rush into this.
Lucas Coons.
When I was at the Pentagon, I worked with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, doing counterproliferation work and then doing arms control treaties. And one of the kind of scary things we saw in that treaty work was the proliferation of AI and weapon systems, and the fact that we don't have any treaties, we don't have any laws governing that. And so one of the things that we definitely need to do is make sure that we work with other countries to develop treaties so that we don't have an escalation warfare on this. And the second part of that, that also ties to national security on AI, is we can't let China win this race. Like, we have to get involved. We can't let our big tech companies run rampant. We need to get our hands dirty. We need to get in there. We need people who understand the issue, the national security implications, and we need to make sure that, again, just like on energy, China doesn't control this future, or some other country that's not friendly to us doesn't control the future of AI.
Jared Young.
With any new technology, there's a lot of fear surrounding it, and a lot of uncertainty. I certainly agree that we need to take steps to protect people from the worst aspects of AI. like deep fakes and protect our children. But we also need to be careful that we don't stifle innovation. And so getting the government too deeply involved is going to stifle innovation and prevent a lot of good from happening from AI. I agree with Lucas that we need to be considering the national security perspective and get quickly involved on that so we can get ahead of it and not find ourselves behind the ball.
Josh Hawley.
We had to pass my bill with Senator Amy Klobuchar to ban deepfakes in our elections. We shouldn't be using deepfake technology, AI technology to deceive voters. It's absolutely wrong. And all AI generated in both presidential primaries this year attempts to use AI in a deceptive manner, both on the Republican and the Democrat side. I think that's just a taste of what is coming. And let's not forget who controls AI in this country. It's these mega corporations. It's the same big tech companies. We ought to hold them accountable, and we ought to protect our kids from deep fakes. The porn industry, the deep fakes that they are creating, ruining young people's lives. We ought to allow those victims to sue in order to protect themselves. Now, time is nearly expired and the debate is nearly over, and I haven't heard an answer to my signal question, which is, who is Lucas Kunce supporting in the most important election on the ballot? Let's just be honest this year, the presidential. So I got 15 seconds left. I'll give it back, David, if Lucas would like to answer.
That concludes our question period. It's now time to move to our closing statements. Josh Hawley, you're the first to deliver your closing statement, and you may proceed.
Thank you so much, David. Thanks to the Missouri Press Association. We have 15 million illegals who have come across the border just in the last 3 years. We have gas prices that no one can afford, grocery prices that no one can afford. Nobody can afford their mortgage or their rent. And Lucas Kunce wants to double down on every single failed policy that got us here. In fact, it's his policies and his friends, his allies in power, that have brought us to this point. So my question for you is simple. Do you like the direction of this country? Because if it's working for you, go ahead and vote for him and his friends. But if you want to change, if you think that we can do better, if you think we can bring jobs back to America, if you think that we can get good paying jobs back in Missouri, if you think we can close our border and protect Medicare and Social Security for our citizens, I ask for your vote. I ask you to join me in working for change. I ask you to stand with me as we save this country. Thank you again for having me.
Jared Young.
Thank you for having me here today. In our polling and in my conversations with voters across the state for the past year, we've repeatedly had it confirmed that voters in Missouri are desperate for another option. And as you watch these two bicker up here, you can see exactly why. People are desperate for a dose of stability and reasonableness and common sense. And what we've discovered is that 43% of Missouri voters are independents. We are the largest voting bloc in Missouri by far. And 70% of Missouri voters are open to voting for a third party or independent candidate in this Senate race. So the voters don't need to be convinced, they just need to be educated. They need to know that they have a viable third option in this race. My campaign has more resources than any independent campaign in Missouri history. We will do everything in our power to make sure that people know they have a reasonable option this time around. Again, if we send Josh Hawley or Lucas Kunce to Washington, nothing will change about the way things work there. We have to have the courage to choose something truly different and better. And I'm the right person at the right time to make that happen, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Lucas Kunce.
Yeah, I think what we've seen today is Josh Hawley is willing to lie and say anything he can to get reelected. And that's what you're seeing on the TV ads. He's running against me. It's what you're seeing right now. And the reason for that is because he's afraid. Right? He's afraid he's going to lose the $500,000 in book deals he's gotten while he's in the U.S. Senate when he's supposed to be working for us. He's afraid that the people in Missouri are going to realize that while Roy Blunt brought $300 million a year back to the state earmarks during his last few years, Josh Hawley has brought zero back to our state the entire time he's been in the Senate. We literally can't afford that. That's $2 billion over the next 6 years. So if you want to fundamentally change who has power in this country, if you want to bring money back to our state, if you want to make it so everyday people can make their own decisions about their lives, I'm the only guy who's going to do that for you.
Nathan Clown.
I want to thank the Missouri Press Association once again for having me, even though they didn't let me talk as much as the other guys. The choice between the red and the blue team has most Americans not even bothering to vote anymore because they're not going to make a big difference in our lives. Whether you have one or the other in power, the corporate status quo stays in power. They do very little. They're like hands off, let the market do it, leave it to the corporations. That's what they've been doing since the 1980s, and it's not working out very well, is it? Our society needs big changes. We all know it. There's only one change change agent on this stage, there's only one change party, and that's the Green Party, because we don't take the corporate money. We serve the American people only, the way it should be. I recommend that no one ever vote again for a candidate that takes corporate donations, okay, or has dark money that they launder their corporate donations through, so that they can say they don't take corporate money. But we know they got the billions and there's millions of dollars from somewhere. I would love to have your vote, because I'm the only one that will serve you. I'm the only qualified candidate on this stage because of that.
This concludes the Missouri Press Association forum for the U.S. Senate race in Missouri. I want to thank the candidates for a lively engagement here today, and now is the time to show them your applause.
Mr. Coons, thanks for coming.
Yes, sir. No, thanks for having us here. It was really nice. Appreciate you guys. So, yeah, sounds good. I hear you guys having a party tonight, huh?